welcome to the Narrowing Path, walking the spiritual walk. My name is Steve Van Eidestein. Thank you all for joining me again today for the daily reading from James Allen and his daily meditations. Really enjoyed yesterday's reading. I've been saying that a lot lately, but there's just so much that's been said in the last couple weeks, or really since April started, that has just resonated so deeply for me. So it's just been a really realigning bunch of readings this month. So I hope it's been something that everyone that's been listening has appreciated as well. And I appreciate everyone jumping on. So we're going to go ahead and do April 21st. And again, this is going to be fresh to you and fresh to me, meaning that this will be the first time that I hear or see or read the podcast or read the meditation. It will be right on this podcast. And so you get my genuine response, reactions, observations, and what I relate to about the reading. So I'm looking forward to it. So here we go. James Allen's Daily Meditations for April 21st. He who clings to his delusions, loving self and sin, cannot find the truth. Truth brings joy out of sorrow and peace out of perturbation. It points the selfish to the way of good and the sinners to the path of holiness. Its spirit is the doing of righteousness. To the earnest and faithful it brings consolation. Upon the obedient it bestows the crown of peace. I take refuge in truth. Yeah, in the spirit of good, in the knowledge of good, and in the doing of good I abide. And I am reassured and comforted. It is to me as though malice were not, and hatred had vanished away. Lust is confined to the nethermost darkness. It hath no way in truth's transcendent light. Pride is broken up and dissolved, and vanity is melted away as a mist. I have set my face towards the perfect good, and my feet in the blameless way. And because of this, I am consoled. I am strengthened and comforted, having found refuge in truth. Wow. So much about the strength that just comes from practicing the spiritual way of life that we get the opportunity to do today. What an encouraging reading. Even the opening line I found just spot on. He who clings to his delusions, loving self and sin, cannot find the truth. It's one of those things where we have to start by practicing a little bit of faith and exerting some self-control. And it starts to give us the opportunity to change our thinking and gives us the opportunity to change our hearts and intention. And I didn't know that was possible. But in the recovery community, especially for substances and alcohol, they say you've got to stop drinking to stop drinking. You got to quit drinking to stop drinking, and you got to quit drugging to stop drugging, meaning you got to practice some discipline at the front end of your own willpower and volition to actually stop a behavior first. And then you can have the opportunity to change it. The forced external change will only last temporarily until you do the inner work with it. Like we've said multiple times here. So, he who clings to his delusions, loving self and sin, cannot find the truth. We have to have an honest desire to find the truth and stop practicing the sin and ignorance that we actually enjoy so much. So the main body of it starts out with truth brings joy out of sorrow and peace out of perturbation. It points the selfish to the way of good and sinners to the path of holiness. I really love how he talks about spirituality as truth. And when you can see the reality of situations, the truth of situations through a perspective that's not selfish and self-centered, you can find joy even in sorrow. You can find peace in perturbation or times of disciplined practice and with a lot of things going on. It points the selfish to the way of good, right? The truth, walking the path of truth. You're going to find goodness through doing this. Through the spiritual walk of life, you're going to find goodness. And the sinners to the path of holiness. This is the path that we take to stop these things, to start to align ourselves more with that good, with the truth, with the God as we perceive him. Its spirit is the doing of righteousness. It's in our actions. And the intention behind our actions. And the purpose of our actions. To the earnest and faithful, it brings consolation. Upon the obedient, it bestows the crown of peace. So those who pursue it, it brings something worth working towards. And then the obedient, those who practice this way of life faithfully, it brings peace. And that's been my own experience. It's been what I believe to have happened to me, or at least the direction I've taken. I know so much more peace today than I ever thought was possible for me by practicing this way of life. And I have the most I've ever had. And to be honest, to say this is as good as it gets is probably very, very short-sighted. So I'm sure it only gets better. There will be more trials and more tests and more troubles ahead. But it's just going to be the opportunity to unravel more of my ignorance, to be able to follow this path more. So it's definitely believe that last line just from my own personal experience. I take refuge in truth. Comfort. I take, that's my rock. That's my place of solace. That's my place of protection, is truth. I can always stand upon that because that is always real. That is always there. I can always trust that. Yeah, in the spirit of good, in the knowledge of good, and in the doing of good, I abide. Right? So what we hold in our hearts, the spirit of good, the knowledge of good, the right thoughts, and the deeds we do, the doing of good, I abide. That is where I rest, regardless of external situation, regardless of how it affects me or may influence my life. You have to constantly practice the good. And do I do it perfectly? No, but I can tell you when I practice that principle, and I practice that trifecta, those three things, my life and my relationships and my circumstances seem to go better than I ever thought was possible. And I am reassured and comforted. Those are two powerful words, isn't that? Reassured and comforted. Those are two things that so many seek in a time of unknowing. We seek reassurance, we seek comfort, but sometimes we take comfort and reassurance in the trust and then the belief in the walk of life that we've chosen. And that allows us to let go of the outcome and just let it be what it's going to be and what it's supposed to be, instead of us meddling and getting in the way of it. It is to me as though malice were not, and hatred had vanished away. You know, that's one thing I did notice as I progressed on my journey of spirituality and sobriety and I'll say self-improvement. That sounds such a generic term these days, but just personal growth and understanding. I've come into situations where I actually reached for old, selfish and bad behaviors, and they weren't there anymore. It just, the self-consciousness wasn't there. The self-deprecating thoughts weren't there. The anger wasn't there. The self-pity wasn't there. The rage wasn't there, right? I've been in situations where I expected to find those coming up, and it just didn't happen. And then I was able to just pass through them like it was never even a consideration. And it was, I remember when these things happen. I remember that feeling of anticipation of a certain emotion, and it didn't show up anymore because of the way of life that I'm living. And the blessing of this spiritual journey. I was awestruck. Lust is confined to the nethermost darkness. It hath no way in truth transcendent light. And this isn't just a sexual lust, but it's lust over everything. That desire for more and more and more. It's almost gluttonous, but that pleasure-seeking behavior. It can touch any part of your life in many, many ways. Is confined to the nethermost darkness. It hath no way in truth's transcendent light. Pride is broken up and dissolved, and vanity is melted away in a mist. I will say this is one of my heart. This one, pride and vanity, are two of the ones that will constantly resurface. My ego likes to get involved and come back and attach to anything, right? It likes to just make itself overinflated for any reason it can come up with, and it takes it as a sign of, and uses it as a pedestal of judgment. And I'm constantly on the lookout for that, because it's very easy for that to show up. It's so natural, the human condition, to attach your ego to pride, to vanity, to that overinflated sense of self-worth, or overinflated sense of importance or entitlement to things. And I have to constantly take a look at situations I'm in and make sure it's not my pride that's just sitting in my way, that's blocking me from coming to a resolution with something, that's blocking me from being able to see something clearly. I have set my face towards the perfect good, and my feet in the blameless way. And because of this, I am consoled. So when we walk this path, when we pursue this path diligently, the rewards of this path don't come when we get to perfection here, when we achieve that truest righteousness that we are aiming at. It's the diligent pursuit to align yourself with that perfect good that the rewards will come from. When I've set my face towards the perfect good and my feet in the blameless way. So we see it, and we also walk towards it. Right? We acknowledge it, and we're willing to take the actions to grow in that way. And because of this, I am consoled. I give that consoling peace, that refuge, that knowing. It's just, there's a saying that's in the 12-step community, that God doesn't make too hard of terms with those who seek. And that's kind of what that's reminding me of right now. We just have to continue to seek and grow and progress. And no, we're not perfect, but we have to strive for that perfection. And we'll be blessed beyond our wildest dreams, more than we could ever consider. So he ends it with this line: I am strengthened and comforted, having found refuge in truth. And Thank God for that. Thank goodness for that. Thank whatever you'd like to thank for that, because I used to rely on my own strength and ability to comfort myself, and it drove me down a path of destruction. But when I rest those things and draw on the truth for those things, I find that there's so much more available to me than I ever had before. So I am strengthened and I am comforted for taking refuge in truth. And reality of it is, I've only really started this journey, and I've got the rest of my life to practice it, so who knows what's going to come. Like I said earlier on today's episode, I'm sure I'm just at the beginning. And I'm amazed at what I've been blessed with already. I can't imagine what 10, 15, 30 years from now it'll look like. It's exciting. But I also know with the progress comes work. It just doesn't happen. There will be constant situations I will find myself in where I have to choose to make the spiritual decision, the good decision, the righteous decision, instead of my own selfish and self-seeking decisions. So, but all right, well, that's it for today. That's where we're going to end. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up, and we'll look forward to tomorrow's. Like I said, another just pillar of a reading today, just strong and encouraging, talking about the blessings of walking this walk and living this way. So thank y'all for joining me, though. So I will touch back with you tomorrow then. Until next time. Thanks.